So that's one of the things I want to talk about the vacation, and maybe extending it a little bit further.
What?
Had some time off, and I think I've got some other things, some other cats I want to skin, some other things I want to get into.
They dissect moments of manipulation, intimidation, and control, contextualizing them within both personality psychology and workplace dynamics. This expert commentary adds a layer of depth, helping viewers understand that while Aaron's behavior was deeply damaging, it is also reflective of broader patterns seen in creative and competitive industries. The documentary doesn't shy away from exploring the consequences of these behaviors on the work itself. Despite the toxicity, Aaron's genius remained undeniable. The custom builds were groundbreaking, innovative, and often breathtaking. Yet the human cost behind these achievements is brought into sharp relief. Deadlines met at the expense of mental well-being, creative collaboration stifled by fear, and the constant emotional tension that permeated every project. Interviews with former colleagues reveal the bittersweet nature of their experience, pride in the work they accomplished together, but lasting scars from the way it was achieved. As the narrative progresses, the documentary delves into the aftermath, how those who left the shop process their experiences, reclaimed their confidence, and reflected on the lessons learned. These stories serve as both cautionary tales and testimonials of resilience, showing that even in the shadow of genius and toxicity, individuals can emerge stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. This segment emphasizes a human capacity to survive and grow, even when working under someone whose behavior could be as destructive as it was brilliant. Finally, the documentary frames Aaron Kaufman's story as a study in contrasts: talent versus temperament, charisma versus cruelty, inspiration versus fear. It challenges viewers to consider the complexities of human behavior, the cost of unchecked ego, and the thin line between genius and destructiveness. Through archival footage, interviews, and dramatic narration, the story presents a nuanced portrait of a man whose name is synonymous with automotive innovation, but whose personal conduct left lasting consequences for those who worked closest to him. It is a tale of brilliance, ambition, and human imperfection, a story that lingers in the mind long after the engines of Cool.as. The story deepens. The reputation surrounding Aaron Kaufman becomes even more complicated, shaped not only by mechanical brilliance but by the emotional aftermath left in his wake. Former collaborators describe an atmosphere where silence often spoke louder than words, a room full of talented builders hesitant to challenge ideas, afraid that any disagreement could trigger an explosive response. One mechanic recalls the tension before every major reveal, saying the pressure wasn't just about impressing clients, but about avoiding Aaron's disappointment. When he was unhappy, the source explains, you felt like the ground disappeared beneath you. These recollections paint a picture of a workplace driven not only by creativity, but by fear of failure under a leader whose expectations seem impossible to satisfy. The documentary-style narrative explores how this dynamic gradually transformed relationships within the shop. Colleagues who once collaborated closely began competing for approval, creating divisions that fractured the team's unity. Some describe how Aaron's unpredictable reactions forced him to adapt, learning when to stay quiet, when to agree, and when to step back entirely. Over time, the culture shifted from open collaboration to guarded survival, where every decision carried emotional risk. The irony, as many interviewees point out, is that the very environment that produced groundbreaking automotive builds also eroded the teamwork necessary to sustain them. The tension between innovation and instability became the defining theme of their experience. Beyond the workshop, the emotional consequences extended into personal lives. Several former employees recall bringing stress home, replaying confrontations in their minds, and questioning their own abilities. The documentary highlights these quieter impacts: sleepless nights, strained relationships, and the lingering self-doubt that followed them even after leaving. For some, the experience became a turning point, motivating them to seek healthy environments and redefine what leadership should look like. Their stories add a layer of introspection to the narrative, transforming it from a simple expose into a reflection on workplace culture and human resilience. Yet, even amid these difficult memories, there remains an undeniable respect for Aaron's talent. Interviewees speak about moments when his creativity electrified the entire shop, when he envisioned solutions others couldn't see, or transformed raw materials into stunning custom machines. These flashes of brilliance made it harder for many to walk away, reinforcing the emotional complexity of working with someone both inspiring and intimidating. The documentary carefully balances these perspectives, emphasizing that the truth lies in the contradiction, a gifted innovator whose behavior could uplift or undermine those around him. As the narrative unfolds, experts weigh in on the broader implications of such leadership styles. They discuss how high-pressure creative industries often reward intensity, sometimes overlooking the human cost. Through this lens, Aaron Kaufman's story becomes more than a personal account. It becomes a case study in the dangers of equating talent with authority. The documentary suggests that brilliance, when paired with empathy and collaboration, can elevate entire teams, but when combined with volatility, it risks leaving lasting damage. In the end, the voices of those who worked alongside him converge on a shared conclusion. Their experience was unforgettable, both for the extraordinary achievements and the emotional challenges. The phrase, "he was the most evil person I ever worked with," echoes not as a simple accusation, but as a reflection of the intensity, fear, and conflict that defined those years. Through layered storytelling, candid interviews, and reflective commentary, the documentary paints a portrait of a man whose legacy is as complex as the machines he built, a mixture of genius, controversy, and the human stories left behind. As more voices emerge, the portrait of Aaron Kaufman grows increasingly layered, revealing a man whose presence could dominate an entire room without a single word. Former team members described the uneasy silence that often fell over the shop when he walked in, not out of respect alone, but out of uncertainty. Nobody quite knew what mood he would bring or how quickly it might change. One builder remembers how even the smallest critique could escalate into a tense confrontation, leaving the team scrambling to recover both the project and their morale. You learn to read his expressions like warning signs, the source recalls. If something wasn't perfect, you brace yourself. These moments, repeated over years, shaped the emotional landscape of the shop, turning what should have been a collaborative space into one dominated by fear, tension, and survival. The documentary style emphasizes these stories with slow-motion reenactments, dramatic close-ups, and reflective interviews, allowing viewers to feel the intensity and psychological pressure firsthand. Yet Aaron Kaufman's story is not painted in simple black and white. Interspersed with these accounts of cruelty are examples of his undeniable brilliance and the moments that inspired awe. Teams recall the exhilaration of witnessing him solve impossible mechanical problems, of turning a rusted wreck into a jaw-dropping custom masterpiece in a matter of days, and of the infectious enthusiasm he could bring when he was in his element. This contrast between brilliance and volatility is a central theme of the documentary, illustrating how genius can coexist with destructive behavior, creating a tension that leaves colleagues both inspired and exhausted. It is a story that forces viewers to grapple with the complex nature of talent and the ethical responsibilities that accompany it. Psychologists and industry experts provide analysis throughout the narrative, offering insight into how high-pressure, high-visibility careers can amplify toxic behavior. They discuss how individuals like Aaron, driven, creative, and unrestrained, can develop patterns of intimidation, manipulation, and emotional volatility, particularly when authority is unchecked. This expert commentary bridges the gap between anecdote and analysis, helping audiences understand that while Aaron's behavior was deeply harmful, it was also symptomatic of larger dynamics in industries fueled by ego, competition, and the pursuit of perfection. The documentary also explores the personal toll on those who work closest to him. Former colleagues share how relationships fractured under the strain of his behavior, how talented employees left promising careers behind to escape the toxicity, and how trust became a fragile commodity within the shop. Through their voices, the audience sees the human cost of brilliance when paired with volatility. Every car built, every creative triumph, came with hidden consequences, anxiety, fear, and emotional strain that lingered long after the engines cooled. Interwoven with these personal accounts is a broader reflection on accountability. The narrative asks difficult questions. How do we separate talent from temperament? How much should personal behavior influence professional recognition? And when someone is celebrated publicly for genius, how do we reckon with the private harm they may have caused? These themes give a documentary a moral and emotional depth, transforming it from a simple expose into a meditation on ethics, human complexity, and the cost of greatness. Finally, the documentary doesn't shy away from legacy. Aaron Kaufman remains a figure of fascination and admiration in automotive circles, but the narrative ensures that his story is seen in full as both brilliant and flawed, inspiring and destructive. It highlights the resilience of those who worked under him, the lessons learned, and the ongoing conversations about how genius and morality intersect. Through candid interviews, reflective commentary, and archival footage, viewers are given a nuanced understanding of Aaron Kaufman, a man whose talent and ambition created marvels on wheels, but whose temperament left lasting consequences for those who crossed paths with him. Ultimately, this documentary-style exploration tells a story far larger than one shop, one television personality, or one controversial figure. It is a story about the complexities of human behavior, the tension between brilliance and destructiveness, and the courage required to speak truth in environments dominated by fear. It is about the emotional and professional cost of genius when unchecked by accountability, and the lessons that emerge when those who survive the storm finally tell their stories. The result is a riveting, deeply human portrait of Aaron Kaufman, a narrative of talent, terror, and the thin line between admiration and fear that defined the most unforgettable years in the shop. Even years later, the echoes of working under Aaron Kaufman still linger in the memories of those who survived his workshop. Former employees recount the unpredictable emotional climate, where a single comment could uplift or devastate an entire team. One former colleague shares, voice trembling, "You'd come in thinking today would be great. He'd be praising your work, and by lunch, you'd be questioned in a way that made you doubt your skills entirely." These stories underscore a chilling duality. Aaron's brilliance inspired innovation and creativity, yet his volatility created fear and uncertainty that permeated the shop. It was this fine line between admiration and terror that defined the experience of working alongside him. The documentary-style narrative explores the mechanics of manipulation and control, showing how Aaron's charisma often masked the toxicity of his behavior. Insiders reveal how he could charm and inspire in one moment, only to demean and belittle in the next, creating a psychological roller coaster that left employees constantly second-guessing themselves. This duality, the documentary suggests, was part of what made him both legendary and feared, a man whose genius demanded attention but whose ego demanded submission. Through candid interviews and slow-motion reenactments of tense moments, viewers are transported into the pressure cooker environment of the shop, feeling the intensity of both creativity and conflict. Beyond the day-to-day interactions, former team members reflect on the personal toll of working in such a charged environment. Friendships were tested, family time was sacrificed, and mental health often became collateral damage in the pursuit of perfection. Some employees left promising careers behind, unable to reconcile admiration for Aaron's talent with the emotional cost of enduring his wrath. Others remained, compelled by loyalty, financial necessity, or the hope that moments of brilliance would outweigh moments of cruelty. The documentary highlights these human struggles, providing a window into the resilience required to navigate the emotional turbulence of working under someone described as the most evil person I ever worked with. Aaron Kaufman's own perspective is addressed as well, using clips from interviews, social media statements, and archival footage. The narrative juxtaposes his public persona, confident, witty, and effortlessly skilled, with a private account of those who experience his darker side. Experts in psychology and organizational behavior offer analysis, explaining how high-pressure industries, combined with unrestrained ego and unchecked authority, can foster destructive patterns of behavior. In the high-octane world of custom cars and automotive innovation, few personalities have sparked as much admiration and as much controversy as Aaron Kaufman. Celebrated by fans for his ingenuity, mechanical genius, and fearless approach to pushing the limits of automotive design, Aaron became a household name through his work on hit shows like Fast and Loud. Yet behind the camera, stories began to emerge from those who had worked closely with him, tales that painted a darker, more complicated portrait than the public ever saw. "He was the most evil person I ever worked with," one former colleague confesses, a statement heavy with years of tension, frustration, and betrayal. In this documentary-style exploration, we dive deep into the turbulent world behind the gleaming cars, examining how ambition, ego, and unchecked temperament can twist even the most gifted talents into sources of fear and conflict. From behind-the-scenes confrontations on the shop floor to high-stakes decisions that threaten not only careers but personal integrity, the narrative unfolds like a high-speed collision between genius and moral reckoning. Sources recount incidents that shook the foundations of the team, where Aaron's relentless drive sometimes tipped into cruelty, harsh words, manipulative tactics, and a complete disregard for collaboration. Employees describe a tension-laden environment where mistakes were not treated as opportunities for learning, but as triggers for public humiliation. One insider recalls, "It wasn't just about being tough, it was about crushing people so he could look bigger." The documentary-style narrative paints a vivid picture of a workplace dominated by charisma and talent on one side, and fear, resentment, and mistrust on the other. Aaron's reputation as a brilliant builder contrasted sharply with the emotional toll his behavior took on those around him, creating a paradox that left many struggling to reconcile admiration for his skill with the trauma of his actions. Interviews with former coworkers revealed the psychological impact of working under someone they describe as calculating and ruthless. Beyond the immediate conflicts over car builds and deadlines, Aaron's approach created long-lasting effects. Friendships fractured, morale plummeted, and professional trust was eroded. These narratives are punctuated with first-hand accounts, detailing moments of emotional manipulation, public belittling, and decisions that favored self-interest over teamwork. Each story contributes to a larger understanding of how one person's behavior can ripple through professional environment, leaving indelible scars even on the most loyal team members. Yet, the documentary also explores the paradox of Aaron Kaufman, a man capable of mechanical genius, innovation, and charm, who simultaneously cultivated an environment of fear and discord. Experts in organizational psychology weigh in, analyzing how gifted individuals in high-pressure industries can develop destructive patterns when ego, ambition, and stress collide. Through these insights, the story moves beyond personal grievances to a broader exploration of leadership, responsibility, and the cost of unchecked authority. It is a cautionary tale of how brilliance can be overshadowed by toxic behavior, leaving behind a legacy as complicated as the machines he built. Fans of Aaron Kaufman might struggle to reconcile this darker narrative with the public persona of a fearless, charismatic builder. Yet the documentary-style storytelling doesn't shy away from these contradictions, using interviews, archival footage, and personal testimonies to illuminate the tension between public image and private reality. It asks difficult questions. How much of genius excuses harmful behavior? At what point does ambition become destructive? And how do colleagues survive, adapt, and ultimately tell their stories in the aftermath? Each answer, each recollection, adds layers to a portrait of a man whose talent is undeniable, but whose interpersonal impact left a trail of damage, fear, and resentment. As the narrative unfolds, viewers are drawn into a world of high-stakes builds, roaring engines, and the adrenaline of automotive mastery, but always with the undercurrent of tension, conflict, and moral ambiguity. The story of Aaron Kaufman, as told by those who lived it, becomes a meditation on human complexity, the collision of talent and temperament, and the blurred lines between admiration and accountability. Through candid interviews, reflective commentary, and careful examination of events, the documentary-style narrative unpacks the full spectrum of experiences, the brilliance, the betrayal, and the emotional cost of working alongside someone deemed the most evil person by those closest to him. Ultimately, this is not just a story about one man's behavior or one shop's turmoil. It is a story about the human consequences of power, ego, and the pursuit of perfection at any cost. It is a story about resilience, survival, and the courage of those who chose to speak out despite fear, shame, or career risk. And it is a story about the contradictions that define genius, a reminder that brilliance does not immunize one from moral scrutiny, and that every legend has shadows that must be confronted to understand the whole truth. By peeling back the layers of myth, charisma, and reputation, this documentary-style exploration reveals a portrait of Aaron Kaufman that is as riveting, complex, and unforgettable as the custom cars he created. Behind the roaring engines and gleaming custom builds, Aaron Kaufman cultivated an environment that insiders describe as volatile, unpredictable, and at times outright hostile. Former employees recount a mix of admiration and fear: admiration for his mechanical brilliance and eye for design, and fear for his sudden outbursts, harsh criticisms, and manipulative tactics that could turn the mood of a shop in an instant. Every project carried not just the weight of innovation, but also the weight of Aaron's exacting expectations, which often cross a line into intimidation. You never knew which version of him you'd get each day, one former colleague recalls, voice tight with memory. It could be inspiring genius in the morning and absolute terror by the afternoon. This duality became the defining characteristic of life working alongside him, a constant push and pull between inspiration and intimidation. The documentary dives deep into the incidents that left lasting scars. Employees share stories of being publicly humiliated over minor mistakes,